They thought they could bury me, but I held the evidence to bring them down. I'd been standing in that conference room for 28 years. Not that exact room. We'd moved buildings twice since I started, but the same position. Field operations manager. The guy who made sure Apex Build actually built things that didn't fall down. My name's Calvin Holt, 58 years old, 28 years at Apex Build. The last 18 overseeing every major commercial project in Raleigh, North Carolina. I'd kept my head down, my sites compliant, and my crews safe. Never missed a deadline that wasn't killed by weather or supply chains. But Ethan Carver, the new COO, saw me as a relic to be scrapped, and I was ready to make him regret it. But Ethan Carver, our new chief operating officer, fresh from some tech company in Texas, looked at me like I was an outdated piece of equipment. He'd been with us 8 weeks. I'd been pouring foundations when he was still in college. The board wants a restructuring plan by next quarter, he continued, not making eye contact as he scrolled through his tablet. We need to cut overhead and streamline the old processes. Old processes? I said, voice sharp. The ones that kept us safe? He smirked. Times change, Calvin. You haven't. The old processes? The ones that kept our building standing and our permits in order? I nodded and said, I understand. That was it. No argument, no defense, just acknowledgement. He seemed surprised by that, expecting pushback, maybe even hoping for it, something to justify what I already knew was coming. I met his gaze unflinching. You're underestimating me, I thought, my resolve hardening. The meeting ended with nothing decided, but everything understood. I was being phased out, and 28 years of institutional knowledge labeled as overhead. When I got back to my office, a cramped space with filing cabinets and site maps covering every wall, I opened my bottom drawer. Inside was a thick blue folder I'd been maintaining for 10 years. Not for this day specifically, more like insurance against the day someone made a catastrophic decision. Every corner cut, every inspection rushed, every permit finessed, all documented, dated, and annotated in my neat block handwriting. Not that I'd done these things. I'd fought against each one. But when executives made decisions from boardrooms about timelines that couldn't work in the real world, I kept records. When we started work before permits cleared, I noted it. When we used materials different from specifications, I wrote it down. I touched the folder. Its weight, a silent promise. You'll pay for ignoring me, I whispered. I closed the drawer without taking the folder out. Not yet. Maybe it wouldn't come to that. But as I watched through my office window, I saw Ethan shake hands with a young man in an expensive suit. They were laughing, looking toward my office. That's when I knew. They're plotting my end, I thought, anger simmering. But I've got the upper hand. I started at Apex Build back when old man Walter Vance still ran things. Walter had built the company from a residential contractor into one of the biggest commercial developers in central North Carolina. He taught me that buildings were about people, not just profits. Every shortcut shows up eventually, Calvin, he'd say during site inspections. Might be next week, might be next decade, but gravity and water always collect their debts. I took that to heart, becoming known as the blueprint man, the guy who followed plans to the letter, who knew every building code by heart, who could spot a potential issue before the first shovel hit dirt. You're the backbone, Walter once said, clapping my shoulder. That trust kept me going. When Walter retired and his son Nathan took over in 2012, things started changing. Nathan was ambitious, impatient. He wanted growth, wanted to compete with the national firms. Not necessarily bad goals, but his methods worried me. We need to be more aggressive, he'd say in management meetings. Everyone bends the rules a little. We're leaving money on the table being so cautious. Rules keep people alive, I'd argued once. Nathan laughed. You're too rigid, Calvin. The first time we started foundation work without final permit approval, I raised hell. Nathan pulled me aside. Calvin, you're valuable to this company, but things have changed. Sometimes we need to start early to meet deadlines. The permits always come through eventually. He was right about that last part. They did always come through because I had relationships with every inspector and zoning official in the county. People who trusted me when I said issues would be fixed. People who believed me because for 3 decades I'd never lied to them. The blue folder started that day, not out of spite, but self-preservation. If something went wrong, I needed to show I'd objected. "You're forcing my hand," I'd told Nathan then. He shrugged. "Adapt or get left behind." Over the years, my objections became quieter. I still raised concerns, but I documented more and argued less. I became known as the old school guy, reliable but behind the times. Meanwhile, I watched young project managers get promoted based on how quickly they completed jobs, not how well they were built. I noticed how Nathan kept moving more aggressive people into leadership roles. 7 months ago, I met Ethan for the first time, 32 years old, with an MBA and no construction experience. Nathan introduced him as the future of Apex Build's operations strategy. I shook his hand and knew immediately the slow fracture that had been spreading through the company's foundation for years had finally reached my office door. "He's here to erase me," I thought, his smug grin confirming it. "Calvin, we're restructuring the field operations division." Ethan sat across from me, flanked by Rachel from Human Resources. 4 months had passed since our first meeting. In that time, he'd brought in consultants, held closed-door sessions with the board, and hired 4 new managers, all under 40, all with business degrees rather than construction experience. "The company is moving toward a more distributed model of site supervision," he continued. "We'll be eliminating the central field operations manager position and creating specialized team leads who report directly to project development." "You're firing me," I said, voice steady. Ethan blinked, caught off guard. "It's progress, Calvin," I nodded, face neutral. "This wasn't a discussion. After 28 years, the board feels you deserve a respectful transition. We're offering 8-month severance, extended health benefits, and consulting opportunities should specific projects require your expertise. Translation: we're firing you, but nicely. We might call if we get desperate." "When would this take effect?" I asked, voice steady. "Immediately." "Today will be your last day in the office." Ethan glanced at his watch. "Rachel will help you with the paperwork and collecting your personal items." 28 years? And you're tossing me out like trash?" I said, eyes locked on Ethan. He shrugged. "It's business." 28 years ended in a 12-minute meeting. I didn't argue. Didn't remind them that I knew every inspector by name. Didn't mention the dozens of times I'd saved projects by calling in favors with city officials. Didn't tell them that permits don't just come through eventually anymore, not since budget cuts had made inspectors more cautious and less flexible. Instead, I signed the papers, shook Ethan's hand, and followed Rachel to my office. As I packed my coffee mug and the photo of my late wife Evelyn, I saw Nathan watching from the hallway. He nodded once, acknowledgement, not apology, then disappeared into the elevator. "Coward," I thought, my jaw tight. "You'll regret this." I took nothing from the filing cabinets. Those were company records except for the blue folder, which I slipped into my bag. That was my record. By noon, I was sitting in my truck in the parking lot, key in the ignition, but engine off. Through the windshield, I could see the Raleigh skyline, 5 buildings I'd helped construct standing tall against the clouds. I'd given this company everything. Missed basketball games when my son was growing up, worked weekends when Evelyn was sick, lost myself in the job after she passed. For what? To be escorted out like I was obsolete equipment? I gripped the steering wheel, anger boiling. "I built those," I said to the skyline, "and I'll protect them." I started the truck, but didn't drive home. Instead, I headed downtown to the Office of Building Safety. Diane Harper had been a junior inspector when I first met her 22 years ago. Now she was the department head. "Calvin," she said, surprised to see me walk in. "What brings you by?" "Problem with one of the sites." "Not anymore," I replied. "I've been let go." Her eyebrows shot up. "Apex Build fired you? Are they insane?" I shrugged. "They're restructuring." "Well, they're lost," she said. "You want to grab coffee, catch up?" I placed the blue folder on her desk. "Actually, I think you should read this first." "This is everything," I told her, voice firm. "They've been cheating the system for years." 2 weeks passed. I hadn't heard anything from Apex Build or Diane. I spent the time organizing my home office and fielding calls from old colleagues expressing shock at my departure. The severance check started coming in a decent amount, but less than promised when prorated over 8 months. My phone rang on a Wednesday morning. Ethan Carver. "Calvin, I hope you're doing well," he said, voice overly casual. "Listen, we're having some issues with the Crescent Ridge project, and I was hoping you might consult for a day or two." Crescent Ridge, the biggest project in Apex Build's pipeline, a multi-use development with retail, offices, and luxury apartments. Ground had broken 4 months ago. "What kind of issues?" I asked. "Just some permit questions." "The city inspector is making a fuss about modified plans that weren't resubmitted. Nothing major, but it's holding things up. Diane had to be." "I'd be happy to help," I said. "My consulting rate is $400 an hour, 2-day minimum retainer up front." Silence on the line then. "That's steep, Calvin. We were thinking more along the lines of your previous salary equivalent." "That was an employee rate. I'm a consultant now," I replied. "And experienced consultants with my specific knowledge don't come cheap." "You need me," I added, voice cold. "Pay up or fix it yourself." More silence. "Let me talk to Nathan and get back to you." They called back the same day, Nathan himself agreeing to my terms, but making it clear this was a one-time arrangement. I signed their hastily prepared contract and agreed to meet the project manager at the Crescent site the next morning. When I arrived, I could see the problem immediately. They'd expanded the foundation footprint beyond what was in the approved plans, encroaching nearly 8 inches into the setback zone. Likely to add square footage to the retail space? Classic Apex Build move these days. Ask forgiveness, not permission. Ethan was waiting with Derek Walsh, the project manager. "Calvin, thanks for coming," Ethan said. All smiles now. "We've got a situation with Inspector Harper. She's claiming we've violated setback requirements and threatening to issue a stop work order." "Have you violated the setbacks?" I asked. Derek shuffled his feet. "The approved plans had a 45F setback. We modified to 37 based on market demand for larger retail footprints." "And you submitted revised plans." "They're in process," Ethan cut in, "but we needed to keep the project moving. Surely you understand how these things work, Calvin. We were hoping you could talk to Inspector Harper to explain the situation. She's always respected you." "You want me to lie for you?" I said, voice sharp. Ethan flinched. "Just smooth it over," he stammered. I nodded slowly. "I see. You want me to use my relationship with Diane to convince her to look the other way while you correct the paperwork?" "Essentially, yes," Ethan admitted. "It's just bureaucratic red tape. The modification is minor." I walked the site, checking measurements and taking notes. The violation wasn't minor. It affected drainage calculations, emergency access routes, and utility hookups. "I'll speak with Diane," I finally said, "but I need copies of everything. Original plans, modified plans, permit applications, approval letters, everything." They provided the files without hesitation, eager to have me solve their problem. "You're handing me your downfall," I thought, pocketing the files. That afternoon, I called Diane from my home office. "You've been busy," she said when she answered. "They asked me to intervene on Crescent," I replied. "I thought they might." "What did you tell them?" "That I'd talk to you," she chuckled. "And will you convince me to overlook their creative interpretation of the approved plans?" "No," I said quietly. "I'm going to help you understand exactly what they've changed, when they changed it, and what other sites might have similar issues. The trap wasn't just Crescent, it was every active Apex Build project in the city." "They're going down," I said, voice resolute. Diane paused. "You're sure, Calvin?" "Never been." Diane and I met at a small coffee shop, far from both downtown and Apex Build's offices. I brought my files, she brought hers. "After I read your documentation," she said, stirring her coffee, "I started pulling every Apex Build permit application from the past 6 years, comparing approved plans with inspection reports. The pattern is clear." She slid a folder across the table. Inside were photos from 9 different construction sites. Each showed subtle but significant deviations from approved plans. Extra square footage, modified structural elements, different materials than specified. "They've been systematically building beyond permit approval," she continued. "Small enough changes that a rushed inspector might miss them, but significant enough to impact safety and compliance." I wasn't surprised, but seeing the evidence laid out was still jarring. This wasn't just cutting corners to save time. It was intentional, calculated violation of building codes. The worst part, Diane said, lowering her voice, is that Nathan Vance has been pressuring my department for years, calling city council members when we enforce codes, suggesting we're anti-business. 2 of my inspectors were reassigned after flagging Apex Build violations. That was new information. The corruption went beyond Apex Build. It had infected the city government. Why come to me now? I asked. You've known about this for years. Diane looked tired. Because your documentation provides a pattern. It's not one inspector's word against a powerful company, it's systematic. And because, she hesitated. Because what? Because I'm retiring in 4 months, Calvin. I've got nothing to lose now, but I need someone who knows the details, who can explain the technical violations to people who don't understand construction. They thought they silenced me, I said, jaw tight. They were wrong. I sat back processing this. Apex Build hadn't just fired me. They'd removed the one person who could testify about their violations with absolute authority. There's more, I said, opening my own folder. After they let me go, I reviewed my personal notes from the past 10 years. Every project has issues, but there's a pattern to Apex Builds. They're not random shortcuts, it's strategic. I showed her my analysis of how Apex Build consistently modified plans after approval in ways that increased sellable or leasable space, how they substituted materials in ways that looked identical but saved thousands per project, how they built faster by starting before permits were finalized, assuming approvals would come through. How high does this go? Diane asked. Nathan knows everything. The project managers implement his vision. Ethan was brought in to streamline the process, make it more efficient, which means fewer checks and balances. And now they want you to help them continue the pattern. I nodded. They think I'm desperate, or loyal, or both. Diane finished her coffee, thinking, the Crescent violation is enough for me to issue a stop work order, but if we're going to address the systemic issues, we need to hit all of it at once. I finished every active project, full inspections, document reviews, material testing. That would effectively shut down Apex Build's entire operation for weeks, maybe months, Diane said. The economic impact would be massive. Jobs lost, projects delayed, projects that aren't being built to code. I interrupted. Buildings where people will work and live. I spent my career ensuring those buildings are safe. I'm not stopping now just because they took my job. Diane nodded slowly. All right, Calvin, let's do this, right? I need everything you have organized by project. Names, dates, specific violations. We'll start with comprehensive inspections of all active sites. This is for Evelyn, I thought, her memory steadying me. For every building I swore to protect. I left the coffee shop, not feeling vindicated, but resolved. This wasn't about revenge. It was about doing what I'd always done, ensuring buildings were built right, only now I was doing it from the outside. The next morning, I met Ethan at the Crescent site as promised. He was anxious, pacing near the construction trailer. Did you speak with Inspector Harper? He asked immediately. I did, I replied, calmly. We discussed the situation at length. Hope flashed across his face. And can we continue work while the revised plans are processed? I explained the technical aspects of the modifications, I said carefully. The setback changes, the drainage implications, the utility conflicts. Ethan frowned. That doesn't answer my question, Calvin. She's following proper protocol, Ethan. The modifications are substantial enough to require full review. You'll need to pause work on the affected areas until approval comes through. His face darkened. That's not what we brought you in for. You brought me in for my expertise in relationships, I corrected him. I provided both. My professional opinion is that the modifications require review, and my relationship with Inspector Harper means, she explained the process thoroughly rather than simply issuing a stop work order. This is, he snapped. Nathan assured me you'd smooth this over. Smooth it over, I said, voice rising. You wanted me to betray my principles. I maintained eye contact. I've done exactly what my contract specified, consulted on the permit issues. My recommendation is to revert to the approved plans immediately or prepare for significant delays. Ethan stormed off to make a phone call to Nathan undoubtedly. I used the opportunity to speak with the site foreman, Miguel, who I'd known for 12 years. They've got you building outside the permits, I said quietly. Miguel looked uncomfortable. Orders from above. They said the revised permits were coming. They're not. And more inspectors will be visiting soon. If I were you, I'd make sure everything that is being built matches exactly what's on the approved plans. Nothing more, nothing less. Miguel got the message. He'd been around long enough to know what was coming. You're setting us up, he muttered. No, Miguel, I said. I'm saving you. Nathan called me that afternoon, his voice taut with controlled anger. Ethan tells me you've decided not to help us with the Crescent situation. I helped exactly as contracted, I replied. I provided expert consultation on the permit issues. Don't play games, Calvin. You know what we needed. You needed someone to help you circumvent building codes and permit requirements. That was never my job at Apex Build, and it's certainly not my job as a consultant. Silence stretched between us. Finally, Nathan spoke again. I've always respected you, Calvin. That's why we offered such a generous severance. But if you're working against Apex Build's interest now, we'll need to reconsider our arrangement. The threat was clear. Back off or lose the severance. Do what you feel is necessary, Nathan. I'll be doing the same. You're making a mistake, he hissed. No, Nathan, I shot back. You made yours when you fired me. I hung up and immediately called Diane. It's happening. Nathan just threatened to cancel my severance. We're ready, she replied. Inspection teams are being assembled. We'll start tomorrow with Crescent, then hit the other sites throughout the week. They'll try to clean things up once they realize what's happening. That's why we're moving fast. And Calvin, the city attorney, wants to meet with you. Your documentation is crucial to any potential enforcement action. The next morning, I watched from my truck across the street as Diane arrived at the Crescent site with 3 additional inspectors and a city attorney. I could see Ethan's panicked expression, the rapid phone calls, the huddled conversations with site managers. By noon, construction had stopped completely. Workers stood in groups, uncertain what to do as inspectors methodically documented every deviation from approved plans. My phone buzzed with a text from Miguel. What the hell did you do? I didn't respond. This wasn't personal. It was about doing the job right, even if I wasn't on the payroll anymore. They'll try to spin this, I thought, watching Ethan's frantic pacing. But the truth is out. 1 month later, I sat in the back row of the city council chamber as Diane presented her findings. The room was packed. Contractors, developers, Apex Build employees, reporters. Nathan and Ethan sat in the front row, their attorneys flanking them. Diane's presentation was methodical, devastating in its precision. Slide after slide showed documented violations across 14 Apex Build projects. Material substitutions that compromised structural integrity, expanded building footprints that violated setback requirements, foundations poured before permits were approved. These are not isolated incidents or honest mistakes, Diane concluded. Our investigation, supported by extensive documentation from former Apex Build operations manager Calvin Holt, reveals a pattern of intentional code violations spanning at least 10 years. Nathan turned in his seat, eyes searching until they found me. The look wasn't angry, it was defeated. The city attorney stood next. Based on these findings, we've issued emergency stop work orders for all active Apex Build projects. Additionally, we're requiring comprehensive inspections of all Apex Build buildings completed in the past 12 years at the company's expense. The chamber erupted in murmurs. This wasn't just a slap on the wrist. This was potentially catastrophic for Apex Build. Furthermore, the attorney continued when the room quieted, we've referred this matter to the district attorney for potential criminal charges regarding the falsification of permit documents. Ethan's face went pale. He'd signed many of those documents after taking over operations. I felt no triumph, only a heavy resolve. Justice was coming, but it cost me everything I'd known. I didn't stay for the rest. I didn't need to see Nathan making statements to reporters or Ethan huddled with attorneys. I didn't need to witness Apex Build's public unraveling. As I walked to my truck, my phone rang. It was Gregory Wells, owner of Stonehaven Construction, one of Apex Build's competitors. Calvin, he said when I answered, I heard what happened. We should talk. I need someone who knows how to do things right. You're offering me a lifeline, I said, surprised. No, Calvin, he replied. I'm offering you a legacy. 8 months later, I stood on the 17th floor of a half-finished office tower in downtown Raleigh, watching crews install steel framing precisely to specs. The city inspector had signed off on our drainage plan, praising its detail. Best I've seen, Tara, my assistant at Stonehaven, told me. I nodded. Schedule the concrete pour for next week, weather permitting. Ensure environmental monitors are set. A news alert pinged. Nathan Vance had resigned as Apex Build's CEO amid ongoing probes. Ethan had fled to Texas months earlier, his career in ruins. Apex Build limped on, its reputation shattered, millions lost. My Stonehaven office was small, but my role as director of compliance gave me power to stop any deviation. Gregory hired me to keep things honest, and I did. Every bolt, every beam, exactly as planned. Tara asked, as we rode the elevator down, regret taking down Apex Build? It was your life for so long. I stepped onto solid ground, the site humming with purpose. No, I said, I regret nothing. I did what was right. But as I looked at the rising tower, straight, true, built to last, I felt Evelyn's absence keenly. I'd won, but at a cost. The skyline held my work, yet the victory was bittersweet, shadowed by years given to a company that betrayed me. Stonehaven was a fresh start, but the scars of Apex Build lingered, a reminder that doing right often comes with a price. I drove home, the mountain steady, but my heart heavy, knowing integrity had saved me, but not without wounds.